Hi, so we're going to be going over Grant Davies' piece. Before we do, I have a slide to provide a little bit of background information on rhetoric and rhetorical situations and how what those within the discipline of writing studies are referring to and talking about when they use these terms. So for more information or more background, read the beginning part of chapter 4. That will give you a lot of good context. But to summarize that section, they talk about rhetoric as explaining how people communicate, how they make up their minds through interacting with each other, and how they change their minds. Meaning that writing is always rhetorical or context specific, meaning that not only is it always have a purpose, a call to action, I would describe it as, but that per context that you're in, the writing rules or expectations are going to constantly be changing. So the authors state that framing rhetoric in this way and remembering that language is context specific and always has a purpose or call to action reminds us to always be asking what in this situation and context will help me predict what will make this writing good. This is responding to the issue or exigence, as Grant Davy gives us that term, that a lot of students go through this first year comp class, having been told mostly by secondary what constitutes as good writing, a set of writing rules that worked great for a particular context, but they're operating under a false notion that there is one set of writing for school that will work in every context. So having a better understanding of rhetoric and rhetorical situations helps us to remember that each writing context has different expectations. For example, writing for your psychology course or this class is going to be different than writing for a different course, or writing for your resume, right, or cover letter, even though all of them require standard English and a certain level of professionalism. Essentially, the main takeaway I want you to take from that beginning section of chapter 4, which you didn't have to read, was when we identify language as rhetorical, we are saying that it is doing something. So when something is rhetorical, it is doing something, simply put. Okay, so to go on to Grant Davies' piece, Grant Davies states that we need to ask 3 questions to understand the exigence of a rhetorical situation. The first, what a text is about, why it's needed, and what it's trying to accomplish. All right, so go ahead and make note of those 3 things: what a text is about, why it is needed, and what it is trying to accomplish. Grant Davies says that understanding this will help us have a deeper understanding of the piece and understanding of the writing expectations. So that's important as you move through your other classes and are asked to interact with material. Definitely be noting those 3 things in anything that you encounter within the university, right? That's going to lead to the deeper understanding, which is going to give room for analysis. This is the first step. But as it relates to this class, as you guys start reading your research articles for your research paper this week, you need to have 1 of those articles read, 3 out of 5 of them found. We're going to go over that a little bit at the end of the video. Ask those questions. Every article that you read, what is this text about? Why is this even needed? What is the larger conversation this is responding to? What's the need in our society that the authors needed to write this? And what is it trying to accomplish? When they sat down, what did they imagine their purpose was, right? Who's their audience? Those kind of questions. All right, so additionally, asking those questions and looking at the rhetorical nature of language helps students move beyond summary and reporting what happened and onto why it happened. That's the difference between summary and analysis, essentially. The difference between asking what happened and asking why it happened. What happened gets at the summary. why it happened, gets at the rhetorical nature, and opens the door for analysis. So another thing regarding the exigence of Grant Davies' article is that a lot of people, a lot of students, undergraduate students, are stuck in the reporting what happened summary, and they never move on to analyzing the rhetorical nature of the situation, and most importantly, evaluating through through analysis. That is actually one of undergraduate teachers' biggest complaint that I personally have heard, is that students just report what happened. They just summarize. They don't go deeper. They don't analyze. So again, the rhetorical nature is very important. It helps you get to that deeper understanding just through your reading so that you're able to write deeply about it, right? And it's those 3 questions. What is the text about? Why is it needed? And what is it trying to accomplish? That's going to get you that deeper understanding in your reading, and also allow you to respond to the author deeper than you would if you're just looking, what is the text literally saying, right? Okay, so questions for that you're going to be responding to with this, and then we're going to go over the research proposal and the choosing information about choosing your topic, right? Okay, so the first question, as a writer, how might understanding the concept of rhetorical situation be useful to you in thinking about the classes you're enrolled in now and your life? So I talked a lot about that in the video. The reading talks about that, so I'm expecting you to integrate both of those to demonstrate that you're actively participating in the class and reading. The second question, what was the exigence of Grant Davies' piece? Would you say you are part of the audience he imagined? Why or why not? And then lastly, find an ad that illustrates Grant Davies' notion of rhetorical situations. Any ad will work. Definitely some will probably be easier than others to identify these things. It can be a video, like commercial, or it can just be an ad, like single picture. Note the exigence of your ad along with the audience, constraints, and stasis, and whether or not you consider this a successful ad. Why or why not? So go ahead and just do 3 initial threads to this. You're going to be creating 3 separate threads. No need to respond to others this week. You're just doing those initial threads. All right, and then I wanted to talk a little bit about the research proposal and what the process of what it looks like to write that proposal, since that's due at the end of this week. Hopefully you've been continuing doing your research and focusing in on that research question. You should have 3 out of the 5 sources by the end of this week and have read one of them. You might have a lot of catching up to do. Know that you need to put in at least a couple hours of research before you write the proposal. The actual writing of the proposal is very short. It'll take you 5-10 minutes. It's the hours of research that comes with reading different abstracts, typing different search terms, and figuring out, first and foremost, what larger conversation are you interested in, right? And then seeing, when scholars talk about those terms, what are the specific conversations that go on? So I wanted to first talk about, again, the different categories that you're going to be choosing your research proposal from, your research topic on. So this is the database research. You guys have seen this before. This is under the student resources. Again, at the bottom of this, you see the 6 different topics, 7 different topics that are pertinent to writing studies issues that we have gone over and are going over in this class. Choose a larger category from here. Or if I like to give students as much choice as I am able to for this. And so essentially students for the Writing 111 courses, as dictated by the writing program, they just need to be investigating issues pertinent to writing studies and looking at how to, just doing research on those issues and developing their own research question in which they answer through that research. So probably easiest is to pick one of these 7 because you know their issues relevant, but definitely you're welcome to go. I made this list for you of the top journals in the field of comp. You could choose one of them. There's a little description under each one. Choose a recent issue, start scrolling through the abstracts and titles, seeing what issues scholars are talking about. So say you choose discourse communities out of these larger topics. Think about what exactly were you interested in with that. Start plugging in search terms related on your interests. So say you thought it was interesting doing discourse communities and talking about how they relate to our identity. So once you type in terms, discourse communities, identities, college students, make sure you're locating it within post-secondary, the university, college, first-year writing, any of those terms will work. Just make sure it's within academia. You'll start to see stuff related to English language learners, right? So maybe that's an area that you would like to research, right? So for your research proposal, you would say discourse community, specific conversation, discourse communities, and English language learners. I've done a lot of research with this, so I'm able to kind of like think about a research question that would reflect that body of research. And I'm like expediting that to show you kind of what it would look like. But there's a lot of doing research, reading the titles, adding them to your folder, reading all those abstracts in between getting to this step of writing the research question. So a potential research question related to discourse identity and English language learners is when you tell English language learners that their first language or home dialect is not welcome in the classroom. How does that rejecting that discourse identity influence their work at school or influence their view of themselves as a writer, as a student, etc.? So that's an example of an intersection that you could look at. And then, so what? Why is this question significant to consider? If we answer this, what knowledge can be gained? The point of that is your research questions need to be more than just interesting to you. They need to extend the conversations and produce knowledge. So for example, if I find out how English language learners are affected by schools telling them to leave their home discourse or ways of speaking and writing at home, we can understand how to better serve this student population and how to differentiate our instruction, for example. Okay. Okay. And then the last thing is direction for Essay 2. You guys have a draft of that coming up. So step 1, if you haven't started that already, definitely start that. Choose the discourse you're going to be observing, collect that data, make that initial observations, set up the interview with somebody in the community. And then step 2 is what I want to show you your resource, showing your resource for Essay 2. So in my other 111 class, they read another piece on discourse by Johns. I'm going to leave it up here. I'm giving you a sheet, the Essay 2 workshop, that has Johns and G. You only are required to apply G for step 2, but I thought that there's a lot of overlap in what John talks about discourse, and if you notice any of these things, or if this was helpful in any way, you can also include this. But no, that's just to benefit you. You're only required to incorporate G. All right. So what I'm referring to, so step 2 says use G to help you frame and analyze the data you've collected. How are the ideas or concept presented by G present in your observation? So,